Hello, and today I'm going to be talking about the top 10 longest wars in the history of the world. So keep in mind as I go through, some of these are before pictures, so some of the pictures with these will just be roughly accurate, but they won't be a real picture. So with that, let's start. So, number 10 is the Vietnam War. The Vietnam War is 19 years from 1955 to 1975. Although there are no official declaration of war, the Vietnam War began on November 1st, 1955, when the United States began providing military support to the newly created nation of South Vietnam in their way against communist-controlled and Soviet and Chinese-supported North Vietnam. Major fighting didn't really begin until 1963. Total number of U.S. troops killed in Vietnam prior to 1962 was fewer than 100. When the war was escalated, first by President John F. Kennedy and then by President Lyndon B. Johnson, the war officially ended on April 3, 1975, when the last American forces left Saigon and North Vietnam took control of the entire country, reunifying the North and South into the Socialist Republic of Vietnam. There was an estimated death of 2.4 million people. Next is the Great Northern War, which is 21 years long, from 1700 to 1721. This war's two main adversaries were Russia under Peter the Great and the Swedish Empire under Charles VII. With various allies fighting on either side at different points, including Denmark, Norway, Poland, Lithuania, the Ottoman Empire, and Great Britain, which actually fought on both sides at different times over the course of the war. The winner was Russia. The outcome drastically reshaped the power structure of Europe, reducing what was then a powerful Swedish Empire to a minor player in European affairs. Russia, in turn, was officially renamed the Russian Empire, with Peter the Great as its first emperor. The victory marked Russia's emergence as a major world power. The First Punic Wars in 8. This was the first length of 23 years from 264 to 241. This was the first three wars between the powerful North African city-state of Carthage, now Tunisia, and the Northern Republic over control of the lucrative trade routes in and out of the Mediterranean Sea. The First Punic War was the longest of the three and was fought primarily over control of the island of Sicily, where most of the fighting took place. In one notable battle near the city of Panormus, now Palermo, the Romans not only killed an estimated 20,000 Carthaginian soldiers in one day, but also captured 100 elephants, when the Carthaginians famously used in battle. The elephants were sent back to Rome, where they are believed to have been killed in the games in the Colosseum. The First Punic War ended in 241 BC, with the Romans emerging as victors, gaining control of most of Sicily. Rome won the Second Punic War as well, when Roman General Scipio defeated Carthaginian General Hannibal in 201 BC. By the end of the Third Punic War in 146 BC, the Romans had demolished the Carthaginian Empire, destroyed the city of Carthage, enslaved, sold, or killed all its inhabitants, and annexed every last inch of Carthaginian territory. Around 250,000 people died. At seventh is the Peloponnesian War. Remember the Greek city-states that banded together and beat the mighty Persians in the Greco-Persian War? Well, once that was settled, the Greeks got back to what they did best, fighting each other. In this war, Athens, which had grown into a powerful empire, fought the Peloponnesian League, a coalition of allied city-states led by Athens' arch-rivals, the Spartans. Sparta is located on the Peloponnese Peninsula, a large landmass that makes up much of southern Greece. Fighting raged through southern Greece as far away as Turkey and southern Italy. This included mass sea battles, the last of which, the Battle of Aegospotami off Turkey's Mediterranean coast, saw the Spartans decimate the mighty Athenian fleet, sinking approximately 150 ships and executing more than 3,000 sailors. Athens surrendered some months later, and by 404 BC the war and Athens' superiority over the region was history. Fifth, the Wars of the Roses. This war for the right to the English throne was fought by supporters of two royal houses, the House of Lancaster, whose heraldic symbol was a red rose, and the House of York, whose symbol was a white rose, hence this war's name. Over the course of the war, the throne changed hands 3 times. One king was killed in battle, another king was executed after being captured, 2 more kings died of natural causes, and scores of lords, dukes, earls, and other royal figures lost their lives, after which many of their heads put on pikes for public display. When it was all over, the House of Lancaster had won. Henry Tudor, the Lancastrian claimant to the throne, was defeated the Yorkist claimant Richard III at the Battle of Bosworth Field in 1485 and became King Henry VII. The following year, he strengthened his position by marrying Elizabeth of York and started a new house, the House of Tudor, which ruled England for the next century. Around 100,000 people died. And fourth is the 30 Years' War, the 30 years 1618 to 1648. On May 23, 1618, a crowd of angry Protestants stormed the royal castle in the city of Prague, in the Kingdom of Bohemia, and threw 3 members of the newly appointed Catholic government out of the castle window. All 3 somehow survived the 70-foot plunge. The event, known as the Defenestration of Prague, ignited Protestant rebellions all across the region. That eventually escalated into an all-out and incredibly destructive war between the great powers of Europe. The main belligerents, the powerful Holy Roman Empire, comprising all of the German states and several neighboring regions, allied with the Spanish Empire against France, Sweden, and Denmark. The losers, the Holy Roman Empire and Spain, both of which lost huge amounts of territory and influence. The big winners, France and Sweden, which emerged as major powers, although Sweden was unable to stay in that position for very long. Around 8 million people died. Next is the Aceh War. I don't know how to pronounce that. 31 years, 1873 to 1904. This war was the result of an effort by the Dutch to consolidate their role in the Dutch East Indies, the former colony that is the nation of Indonesia today. In 1873, the Dutch attacked the Sultanate of Aceh, pronounced Aceh, an independent kingdom on the Indonesian island of Sumatra, in order to take control of the region's lucrative black pepper industry. The Dutch captured the capital of Kudajara in 1874 and declared victory, but they badly underestimated the Acehnese, who took to using guerrilla tactics, and the war dragged on for a total of 31 years, which territory changed ahead several times over that period. In the late 1890s, the frustrated Dutch began a scorched earth campaign that led to the destruction of the Aceh village and the slaughter of thousands of civilians, including women and children. By 1903, the war was basically won by the Dutch, but fighting continued in some pockets of the region until 1914. Today, Aceh is a province of Indonesia, which gained its independence from the Netherlands in 1949. The Guatemalan Civil War. In 1954, a right-wing army colonel, Carlos Castillo Armas, led a successful coup d'etat against the democracy-elected leftist government of Guatemala. The coup was engineered by the U.S. State Department and the CIA. In 1960, a group of left-wing army officers led a coup of their own, but failed to take power. What followed was 36 years of war between the Guatemalan military, which eventually took control of the country, and various leftist guerrilla groups. Fighting didn't stop until 1996, with the signing of a peace treaty between the rebel groups and the government. Concessions were made on both sides, but it was largely deemed a win for the rebel groups. The conflict was one of the first in which terror tactic known as forced disappearance was used. The Guatemalan Army and National Police forces kidnapped, tortured, and murdered between 40,000 and 50,000 people, primarily civilian activists. Most were native people, especially Mayans, and their bodies were dumped into mass graves or dropped into the sea from helicopters. The Greco-Persian War, 50 years between 499 and 449. This was actually 3 conflicts fought over a period of 50 years, that historians bundle into one major war. The fighting was between a coalition of several ancient Greek city-states, led primarily by Athens and Sparta and the Persian Empire, at the time the largest and most powerful empire on earth. The war began with a series of revolts by Greeks in territories that the Persians had conquered decades earlier, followed by full-scale invasion attempts by the Persians, and counterattacks by the Greeks, all with varying degrees of success and failure. Finally, after 50 years, the winner, the Greeks, who successfully repelled the Persians and won back their territories. Number 1 is the 100 Years' War, length 116 years, from 1337 to 1453. Fought primarily between England and France, the 100 Years' War is usually divided into 3 main component wars, one of which raged for 38 years, the Lancastrian War, 1450 to 1453. The fight was over, and English-controlled territory in France and control of the French throne. The war ended with the surrender of the English in 1453 after more than a century of bloodshed. Winners the French, who took back almost all of England's holding in France, beginning a long era during which England was left mostly isolated from European affairs, and within 2 years the English were engulfed in yet another long conflagration. Thank you so much for watching this, and please like and subscribe this video if you like it, and comment what other top 10s you would like to see. Bye.